We are back with another episode of the Analyst Interviews. This time I'm speaking with Sloan Piva. First time on the show with me, so this should be fun. Looking forward to it. Let's go, balls deep.
I'm the type to get shit done. You the type to observe. March Madness on my speakers, but today's November 23rd. Got something loud in the blunt, yeah. I don't say what I want, yeah. Probably somewhere sunny getting tan. Foreign women in the sun, yeah. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. Got my brothers with me. Got my brothers with me, and my mama's healthy. That's all that I need.
Welcome to the Balls Deep podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. Adam King, that's me, at Adam King 91 on Twitter is where you can find me. Another analyst interview. I think this is the 6th episode. Sloan Piva, as I said, first time on the show. I'm pretty sure. I don't think I've had you on here before. So thank you for fitting me in around your busy nighttime schedule.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, long-time listener and first-time guest. So glad to be here.
And so I'm just lots of trophies behind you there. Are they your trophies? Let's start with the obvious.
Yeah, no, they're all stolen from former fantasy league members of mine. No, I'm just kidding. They are mine. Yeah, I can definitely attest to the fact that they are mine. But a lot of them are from yesteryear, if you will. So from my glory days of my athletic pursuits, including basketball and some soccer and American football, if you will, and some volleyball. So those are
okay.
Those are and of course some fantasy championships as well. But
of course, yeah. And then so, well, I guess we'll transition straight into, getting into fantasy basketball or sports media, whatever we want to call it. It sounds like you have a history of playing sport and basketball, volleyball. So are you tall?
Yeah. So I'm about 6'3". I might have lost an inch, so I'm up to 6'2" now.
Yep. Okay.
Given older age and some back problems, but yeah, still pretty tall. So that's always helped me. I joke around in volleyball since I have no formal training in volleyball. I just rely on my height. So I sometimes say that's all I have.
That's all you have. That's all you needed. Obviously, some trophies there. So was it from playing sport that you sort of got into watching and being involved in sport and from a media perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, I always had an interest in sports from a young age, and in my early elementary school days, I had a patch on my eye, and my name is Sloan. So I the chips were stacked against me in terms of popularity. So I kind of needed to A, get the patch off my eye, and B, find something that would help me fit in. And so removed the patch, which never even worked for me in the first place. Started playing basketball and soccer, and basketball is what I really fell in love with at an early age. So 3rd and 4th grade, really got into it. Was the kind of kid that would draw pictures of my favorite basketball stars, and then that eventually turned into writing articles and stories about my favorite sports stars. And I really, from an early age, took a liking to writing. So it was something that I always knew that I wanted to do. So I started my own newsletter at 11 years old. It was called the Basketball Digest. And I would write that, and my mom was gracious enough to let me use her very expensive printer paper and print out quarterly editions. And then I had a little subscriber list, which was mostly family and some friends. So we would actually go and deliver them for, I think it was $2.50 an edition. And that was I got bit by the journalism bug early. So then I ended up studying journalism in college, and I also started playing fantasy sports in college. So those passions sort of intertwined, and I did a lot of freelance work in sports and in fantasy sports, and worked a lot of other jobs to sort of supplement my income and keep
Yeah.
the dream alive. And after many, many years of working in hotel management in Newport, Rhode Island, I ended up landing a job full time with the Sporting News, and now I'm basically their head betting and fantasy analyst. So I do everything from basketball to football to baseball, and I cover
Okay.
most of the large events for fantasy and for betting. So
And
that's
so,
where we're at.
so for fantasy sports, was it fantasy basketball right away, or did you get into fantasy basketball through fantasy football? Because a lot of people that I speak to who are based in the States came to basketball via football.
It was fantasy football first and foremost, I'd say, because I would try the fantasy basketball at first, but it was in public leagues and against
Yeah.
people that I didn't know, because there weren't enough people that were as into it as I was, and I
Yeah.
found playing with people that I knew that weren't that into it sort of turned me off of the whole deal. And now I don't have any problems filling my league. Now there's so much widespread interest in the NBA and in fantasy in general. And there's a deeper understanding of fantasy in general. So it's a lot easier now. So now I can actually do it with my friends, which is always nice. And obviously with my colleagues. And so I end up with 6-7 leagues, which I'm sure in comparison to some of your other guests, it's 6 to 7 leagues is probably light.
Yeah, look, it varies, I think. I know at one point I had about 28 leagues that I was in, and that was just insane. I think I've scaled it back now to similar to you. I think like 6, something like that, which is manageable. Doesn't take up. I don't spend 2 hours every night on the waiver wire in all the leagues looking at who to pick up. So yeah, I think I found the sweet spot. Sounds like similar to you, and I mean, this would be the normally part of the discussion where I then talk to my guest about what work do you do outside of fantasy sports, but fantasy sports is your work. So you are one of the lucky few who actually get to do this for a living. And I'm assuming that allows you just to work from home all the time.
Yes, yeah. So the Sporting News is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And a few years back, before COVID, there were some people, since we have so many different editions all over the world, there were some people that were already working from home, even though they lived in the US. After COVID, a lot of our employees have now worked virtually, and it works out. And for some publications, it works out well. So I'm happy to say that my commute is basically getting out of bed and going downstairs and making a coffee, and I'm ready to rock. So it works out for me. And I do, it's a beautiful thing.
It is.
I do also work some other jobs. I do some some other freelance opportunities when they pop up. I'm working on a novel as well, and I'll be teaching a couple of sports media classes at the University of Rhode Island next year. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. I've done some guest spots and guest lectures for them, and they've really taken to my talks, and they said, would you be interested in fleshing this out and actually teaching a sports media course? And I said, absolutely. Years and years ago, when I was in grad school, I actually taught a couple of courses, but it was courses that weren't as interesting to me. So like English 101 and business communication, very run-of-the-mill introductory courses. And I find that kids are more interested in learning and wanting to read and to write when they're, the topic is something that's interesting to them. So hopefully I can help solve our growing literacy issues in America and maybe help foster the next generation of sports writers.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid comment in terms of using their interest, because I mean, my son comes home, he's in year 8 here in Australia, and he comes home and complaining about how he had English that day. And it's not that he doesn't like writing, because he loves writing, but they're learning Shakespeare and doing novels that we did 30 years ago when we were in school. So I'm not surprised he's bored. And it's not, I mean, it's not concerning, but you can see why a lot of kids just, if they're not interested in it, they lose interest in the topic itself, or that space, the writing space, and move away from it. Whereas if you can get them doing something that they're passionate about, much like us in the fantasy, for me, it's I love doing this stuff. So whether I got paid or not, I'm still going to keep doing it just because I love doing it and learning more about it. So I think a really good idea. And I would imagine, I mean, I never looked into, when I was younger, doing anything like sports media, but would you consider that it's a relatively new option for people to be able to go and do sports media specifically?
I would say yes. For most state institutions like University of Rhode Island, it's a fairly new option. But it's this particular program, they are just seeing more and more interest every year, so it's just shooting up exponentially, and it's great. It's great to see it. But it's not just kids that are just, oh, I need to find a major, I need to get into this. I've found that the URI students, they're immediately finding little internships and jobs that they can do around the campus that have to do with media. And it's just great to see, because they're figuring out what they want to do, and then they're also going out and doing it. So, and that's another thing that I think is huge. Don't just say you're going to do it, start doing it, even if you're not getting paid. And that's one of the things that I learned many years ago, is that you have to sort of make personal sacrifices, and you have to bet on yourself a little bit, like some of these NBA players bet on themselves with 1-year contracts and then end up with big deals. Like, you got to go out and just put in the work and learn and get better, and it always ends up working out in the long run when people have that mentality.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't say all of the people that I've spoken to this year and last year, but majority of them have a story like that, where they started and basically were earning nothing, and just scraping by. And as you said, making those sacrifices to do the thing that they love, and you persevere, and then hopefully, if you're dedicated and good at what you do, it turns into a job like it has for you. Reading through, so having a look at your profile little description thing on Twitter, it says writer, sporting news, but then it also has NBA Canada, NBA Australia, which I think are they sort of part of the sporting news or under the umbrella? And if so, Canada, yeah, I get that, it's right next to America or above America. How did you sort of get into the NBA Australia space? I'm asking as an Australian, and what does that sort of look like? Does that mean you follow along with NBA specific Australian players, or the league here in Australia as well?
Well, so yeah, that's a good question. Well, like I said, the sporting news has a lot of different editions, and we also have lots of different partnerships. So a lot of my content ends up sort of automatically going over to the Canada side and Australia. And we have a very talented senior editor named Benyon Kadane. He a lot of the times will take my betting content and translate it to tabs, since you have different betting odds and different systems down in Australia. So it's sort of easy for me, because it's just while I sometimes do write to tailor to the Australian audience with certain editions of my stories, most of the time I can just write my story and Benyon will turn it into Australian content like that. So he makes my life very easy in that way. And then Canada, we have specific partnership with BetMGM, and who has a large Canadian demographic. So all of our NBA content on the betting side is directly involved with BetMGM odds, and that's sort of the relationship we have with them, and it's worked out for us really well. So that's
Okay.
my connection with Canada and Australia.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, and betting, I mean, it's different, well, no matter where you are in the world. And I know in America it's legal in some states, not legal in other states. Here in Australia, you can bet anywhere. There's no restrictions at all. There's multiple apps, multiple sites. So I would assume, I mean, I'm not a bettor, so I don't know, but I would assume betting gambling is a pretty big sort of revenue maker here in Australia. And I'm not surprised that they want to get as much content as they can out there, especially for American sports. Obviously, we've got all of our local sports here, like National Rugby League and cricket and those things that aren't necessarily as big over there. So, yeah, not surprising that we're trying to pull as much of your content over here and translate it a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah, and it is wild. It's legal in over 3/4 of the United States as well. So
Okay.
before we know it, it's going to be almost 100%.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I do is sort of molded by the widespread interest in betting. And so I might do a home run derby betting piece, whereas 10 years ago that would have been a laughable thought to write an article about who's going to hit the most home runs on a Monday night. But that's here I am studying launch angles and exit velocities and other things that I also never thought that I would be studying ahead of a home run exhibition. But it's never a dull moment for sure.
No, you can bet on just about anything nowadays. So I guess now transitioning away from work and fantasy sports, family life, and again, if anyone follows you on Twitter or they jump on and have a look there, they can see that you have 2 children. Their photos are there. Ellie and Sam's dad. So family pretty important to you, and I'm assuming take up a lot of your time, obviously, as families do. But is that it for your family plans, or you're planning on growing at any point?
I think my wife and I are pretty happy with what we have. A almost 5-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, and they both have a ton of energy and a roaring social life already. We have a lot of birthday parties that we have to pencil into our calendars and day minders so that we don't forget about things. And some days we've got a surf lesson and horseback riding on the same day, and I say, what is going on in my life? But it's also amazing. So it's great to see them evolving into their own little people, and their personalities are incredible, and seeing them learn so much day to day. They're just little spunky. So that is certainly the best part of life to me.
Yeah, and the fact you get to work from home and watch a lot of that rather than being in an office while it's all happening, that I would assume is a huge benefit of what you do, and being able to be around them. Not 24/7, but a lot more than other people.
No 24/7 ever. I don't think that would ever work for me. But yeah, I was working sometimes 60, 70-hour weeks when I was working in hotel management, and I was making a good amount of money. But when my daughter was very young and a toddler, and my wife was pregnant with our second, with Sam, that was when I got the call, would you like to jump into sports full time and work for the Sporting News? And I said, let's do this. And my wife was actually 8 months pregnant. So, in my late 30s, embarking on a full-time career change. It was pretty crazy, but also was really exciting. And I'm really glad that I did.
And you're in Boston, well, you're in Massachusetts, so near Boston, and you have a Boston, the Boston logo on your profile as well. So a Celtics fan. So I'm assuming it's been a happy, last month, I guess.
Wow, yeah, I mean, it's been a happy entire 2023-24 season. It's still hard to believe it's over, but yeah, that was a great ride, and yeah, I'm about an hour south of Boston, so
Okay.
been to my fair share of Celtics games over the years, and
Yep.
definitely a very, very fun ride and great team. Glad they're running it back. But I
Yep.
think next year is going to be a little bit more difficult for them. I think if the league is a little bit more healthy, and the East is obviously already a lot better than it was
Mm.
a few months ago. So I think next year should be even more exciting and even more competitive. So very excited.
Yep. Yeah, no, it should be a good season again, and I mean, it's always nice when I can actually talk to people on here about places I've been, and I've been to Boston. So we went to a Celtics game this season, which was awesome. I'd never been there before, so just going to TD Garden, and it was like, I've had friends here ask me what's it like, and it's, for me, it was the history, like just walking in and you can feel the history and the stories, and you feel like you're walking into not a museum, but there's all the banners, everything that's up in the rafters. It was pretty incredible. And we went to a Celtics game, and then the following night we went to a Bruins game, and
Nice.
the contrasting atmosphere was really surprised me. So just the different, obviously it's a totally different field, court, whatever they play on, but just the atmosphere in the crowd, it was completely different one night to the next. And you said, I mean, you've been to a lot of games. Do you get there regularly during the season?
Not as much now that I have two under five. It's a little bit more difficult, but as much as I can. We're planning. My wife said, "What do you want to do for your 40th birthday? We can do whatever you want." I said, "Let's get 30 people together and get a big suite in the TD Garden and
Okay.
go watch the Celtics." That sounds good to me. Let's do that. If you're saying I can do whatever I want, we're gonna do that. And I don't think it'll be very difficult to find 30 people.
No, I don't
But
think
yeah,
so either.
there's nothing like the Garden atmosphere, in my opinion. It's at least in my experience, it's the best sporting experience that I've had. It's just, the energy is so contagious, and it's just so much passion. And like you said, the rafters and all the history, it's really an institution of basketball, and it's just something else to me. I can never really take it for granted, because it's just something that I've always loved. I started in my early years watching Larry Bird, and he was one of the most impressive players that I've ever seen. So I was lucky enough to have some memories watching him before his back got bad.
Yeah.
He set the bar pretty high. But yeah, we're very lucky here in greater Boston area, and it'll continue to be lucky next year, I think.
Yeah, and Boston itself was probably, we went to a few different places when we were there. My friend he's been a Celtics fan his whole life, so it was sort of one of his bucket list things, was to go and watch a Celtics game. So we've done that, and already planning to go back, because we just loved Boston itself as well, like just the city. We walked everywhere. It was cold. We were there in, I think we were there for the season opener, I think. So it was sort of October, early November. I can't remember the date, but it was very cold. I remember walking around the city, and we found a few coffee shops and just sat inside and got warm and had a coffee, and then continued walking. But no, it's an amazing place. If anyone listening is ever thinking of going to Boston, I would recommend it. As a city, there's so much history, so much to do. It was great. And then I suppose finishing up, talking about, I don't know, interests, things that you enjoy, starting with holidaying. So we've said how good Boston is, but do you like sort of going away, visiting other places, whether it's harder when you have kids, but prior to having kids, were there any any spots that sort of stick out as highlights from traveling?
Yeah, I do love to travel. Yeah, like you said, it's really difficult right now to go
Yeah.
too far. My wife embarked on a journey to Florida to visit her mom, and she brought both kids and our babysitter. So that was an experience. I couldn't go because it was during NBA Finals time, and there was no
Mhm.
way I was getting pulled out of that. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
been able to even spend much time with them at that time anyway. So
Yeah.
but yeah, when we get a chance to go to Florida and visit relatives, we do that when it's not too hot. I mean, when they went, it was close to 100 degrees, so it's a little
Mhm.
too warm for me. Sometimes in the summer, I just like to go to Block Island. It's a little known island down here off of Rhode Island, and it's a great little island, great little getaway. A lot of
Mhm.
people will talk about Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket. I just like to go to
Yeah.
Block Island, just a little
Okay.
staycation. It's not a long journey, but then I also have a lot of family in New York, so that's the big
Okay.
city that I sort of enjoy going to, other than Boston. Those are sort of my two cities. A lot of my family growing up were Yankees and Jets and Knicks fans, so I learned early on how to coexist with fans of other sports. So when people say, "Oh, how are you able to be unbiased and read objectively about sport?" I'm like, that's just come with my DNA. I've
Yeah.
had to deal with uncles razzing me through the 90s when our sports teams in New England weren't good.
Yeah.
And then I had to put on my modest shoes when we all of a sudden started winning all sorts of championships and gaining
Yeah.
titles. So, so I've sort of experienced the lows and highs of being a sports fan, and a lot of people that read me regularly, if not for the shamrock on my Twitter logo, they might not even know that I was a Boston fan, because I just try
Mm.
to be as professional as possible with
Yeah.
that and not be jaded by anything.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I mean, I was a Pacers fan growing up, but now fairly neutral. I still have a soft spot for the Pacers and the Timberwolves, but yeah, you sort of have to come at it with a neutral hat on. You can't be openly biased towards your team.
So
Not too
internally, it
much.
was very exciting for you to see the Pacers face the Knicks in the playoffs. I'm sure that was pretty cool to see that
It
rivalry
was,
renewed.
yeah. Yeah, remembering back to Reggie Miller and those matchups they had, it was a shame that New York was sort of a little bit underdone, I suppose, in terms of player injuries and things like that. But hopefully both those teams can sort of renew that rivalry for the next few years, because they're both quite young. Their rosters are young enough that they could stay in that sort of top 4, top 6 range, I think, for the next few years. So that should be good. Food wise, is there a favorite food for you, and is it something that you grew up with or something you've discovered later in life?
Oh wow! Well, I'm a huge foodie. So growing up with seafood here in southeastern New England and on the coast of Massachusetts, I've been lucky enough to have some of the best scallops in the world, and
Mhm.
a lot of lobster rolls, a lot of clam chowders. So those are sort of textbook. But I also love my pizza. Big into sushi. I used to work at a sushi restaurant. That was one of my many college jobs that got
Yeah.
me through that era of my life. And I love raw fish, love tuna. I shouldn't even say that, probably. There's so much controversy with that, but it's just delicious. I'm sorry to everyone. But
No,
yeah,
it's
I
fine.
do love food, and all my friends know that I also have a tiramisu problem. So I think I need to go to
Okay, a problem,
tiramisu
right?
because during COVID, I was actually treating myself to a tiramisu a week, and
Okay.
so had to calm that down a little bit. I'm almost 40, so I had to say, all right,
Yeah.
let's get our life back into shape here. So I went back to playing basketball, volleyball, and rejoined the gym. Not as many tiramisus now, and it's okay. It's
It's under control.
for the most part.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure you have your slip ups like we all do. And last one, movies, TV shows. That's something that I really enjoy doing is watching movies, going to the movies. binging a good TV show. Is that something that you enjoy doing, or is there simply not enough time?
There's not really enough time to foster that, the relationship that I used to have with movies. I used to be a huge film buff. My mom would get me the, Leonard Maltin encyclopedia of all the
Yeah.
movies. And, I was a huge fan of Roger Ebert, and I always wanted to, grow up to be a sports journalist and movie reviewer, but now I realize you just can't do everything.
No.
But I obviously still go and check out the really good ones. Like, Oppenheimer was something that I had to go and see. And I still will watch the occasional really good show once it pops up. But I'm big Sopranos fan and big Breaking Bad fan. So it's to me, and The Wire as well. So it's really hard to live up to those three shows.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm kind of a tough critic when it comes to television. So there are some shows that pop up here and there that we get into, but yeah, it is tough. And my wife will fall asleep 20 minutes into a show. So marathoning with her is completely impossible now. So a lot of the time I end up watching alone.
Yeah, I'm always watching alone as well. And Breaking Bad is, one of my favorites, if not my favorite show of all time. And I was lucky in some regards. I actually got into Breaking Bad much later. So it wasn't when it was sort of being released. It was right towards the end of the whole show. So I was able to binge the whole thing rather than watching a season and then waiting 12 months or whatever it is till the next season. I was able to just power through the first sort of 4 or 5 seasons, whatever it was, and then basically got myself up to speed with the last season. And because it was split from memory over two sort of, they released the first half, then the second half. So I was able to get up to speed. So that was a show that, I've watched that a few times, and it's full on, but it's very well done. And I can understand then why you like The Wire. Those two shows seem to go hand in hand with a lot of people. I've never actually seen The Wire, and I'm scared to start it because I might not come out of it.
Yeah, you'll be stuck. You'll be marathoning for a little bit there. And have you seen Better Call Saul since you're
so I saw the first 2 seasons, and then it shifted. So here in Australia, it was free to air. You could just watch it, and then it shifted to whatever. It was a station. Was it an HBO show? I don't think it was an HBO show. Anyway, it shifted to something, and
then it was streamed on other, not HBO though.
No, so anyway, streaming it here. So it wasn't on any of our streaming services. You actually had to. So it wasn't on Netflix or. So we have one called Binge over here, which has all the. A lot of the Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, has all of those shows. So it wasn't easy to watch anyway. And so I haven't seen it since about season 2, but I do remember liking it. And so I'll probably get back into it at some point.
I strongly suggest it for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely finish that one up. I didn't think in the first season or 2, I didn't think it was going to end up as good as it was, but it blew me away. I might have to make. I mean, now is the time to do it because basketball is not really happening as much, so I do have a bit more free time. But the Olympics are about to start, and they will take up a lot of my attention for 2 weeks. Are you an Olympics fan? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, my family loves the Olympics, and my daughter is really, really into gymnastics right now, so that's her thing, and she's into swimming as well. So very exciting. And then my son really likes golf and basketball. At 2 years old, he already enjoys watching those sports, so that's great.
Okay.
And we're doing plenty of coverage for the sporting news on the Olympics. We're doing how to watch content, betting content. So yeah, when people say, "Oh, you're in the dog days of summer, it's really slowed down for sports," right? I'm like, no, it really hasn't. There's always something going on, the wheel keeps on turning. There's golf. We've got the British Open, or the Open Championship, if you will, in Scotland this weekend. So
this weekend, yeah.
Three different pieces on that. So it's the big wheel keeps on turning.
It does, yeah. Golf, another sport that I love watching. And here in Australia, we can get up. If I get up early in the morning, I can usually watch the end of the day's play, which times out really well. I can just sit and have my breakfast and watch golf for 2 hours. So I'm hoping Adam Scott can build on his recent, good performances, but bit of bad luck as well. To maybe get back in there, but we'll see. So finish up, I would say, where can people find you and what are you doing? But you're obviously just doing Olympic stuff and constantly writing sport, but they can find you obviously at Sloan Piva on Twitter, but I guess head to the sporting news. Where do they find most of your work?
Yeah, so if you just type my name, I sound like one of the children's show produced, like Blippi or Mika or something. Just type my name and the sporting news, and there's my page. But yeah, it's pretty easy. I'm the only Sloan Piva in the world, luckily, so I have that to my benefit. If you type in Sloan Piva the sporting news, you're going to see my either my US page or my Canada page, and that's where all my content lives. And I have all sorts of different fantasy and betting content at all times. Obviously, a lot more basketball and football coming up this fall, so that'll be exciting. Also, I think I'll be working with Athlon Sports too. They're bringing back some fantasy basketball content this fall as well, and they've asked me to help out with that. So, looking forward to that as well. So I'll be all over the place, and hopefully popping up on your podcast and a bunch of other podcasts as well, because I do enjoy doing that as well.
Yeah, no, we're doing. I think I'm doing 4 episodes a week this season, starting August-ish. So no, I'm sure I'll have you back on the show, and we'll be doing plenty of mock drafts and things like that over the next couple of months as well. Already planning for next season, despite the fact.
Oh man, I can't wait! I'm so excited for basketball. It's like, of all the sports, I love all sport, of course, but of all the sports, there's nothing like basketball right now. I think it's the best it's ever been. Even though I'm still a historian, and obviously the 90s are tough to beat. There's never been as much talent from top to bottom in the NBA. So it's a really, really fun time to cover it.
It is talent and just the fact that it's so global. Like the best players in the league now aren't all American players. They're from all over the world. So, which I feel like just makes international competition better. It makes these players strive to be the best. And so, yeah, it is a really good time for fantasy basketball, but basketball as a broader topic, I suppose. So, no, look, thanks for coming on. I will let you get back to whatever your nighttime routine looks like. And we'll have you on again at some point. Those watching, remember you can like and subscribe. Head over to our Discord server if you wanted to jump in any of our draft-only leagues. And I will be back with another analyst interview very shortly. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.